Hey gang, welcome to another exciting adventure of the Grand Circle Tour podcast. Today we are doing a detour of the Grand Circle Tour, and joining me today in the solo studios we have Jason. Jay, how are you today?
I am fantastic, Stan. How are you doing?
I am amazing as always, but everybody already knows that. George is with me also. George, you got a new hat. You look great.
I do.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Stan. How about yourself? Nice hat yourself.
Oh yeah, I heart Dual Whip, or I Dual Whips Orange Bird Switches Swirl. I don't know. If you want to see what it looks like, you could go.
You know, passengers, he's got the Orange Bird hat on, and I'm just gonna shamelessly say this right now. Anybody who wants to bribe us, they have these Orange Bird sippy cups at Epcot. I'll take one. Stan will take one. George will take one.
I already have one on order. I have a buddy that's getting me one. Fingers crossed that they're able to get me one. So hopefully I can get an Orange Bird sippy cup, because I need one to go along with my Mickey Mouse sippy cup. Orange Bird aside, we're here to talk about Marvel, or in some people may call it Marvel. We'll find out about that later. Marvel. How do you call it? How does Samuel L. Jackson say it? We'll find out later on in the episode. We're going to start off non-spoilerific, and then we'll go into the spoilers as usual. If you're familiar with our format, with our movie reviews, we're going to talk about a little bit about the synopsis. I am speaking English is something awesome today. And kind of go around, talk about what we thought about the movie, and maybe a few more questions. Then we'll go into the spoiler territory, and we'll be very clear when we go into the spoiler territory. So feel free to listen to the entire thing if you've seen the movie. If you haven't seen it, you can listen at your own peril. Let's start off with who enjoyed this movie. I kind of talked a little bit with Jay backstage about whether or not he enjoyed it, so I know where he's at. George, I haven't talked to you at all about this movie. What were your thoughts on Captain Marvel?
Well, I pretty much like with everyone else, I had like my reservation of, okay, ever since, not to bring up another franchise, ever since seeing The Last Jedi, I kind of go into the movie theater with an open mind of saying this could either be a really good movie or an okay type of movie. But I will say, after seeing Captain Marvel, I have to put it up there close with Infinity War and Black Panther.
Wow.
Yes.
Those are big movies.
Yes.
Up with Infinity War and Black Panther. Okay. Jason, what were your thoughts on this movie?
I love this movie. I am all in. This is my fourth favorite Marvel movie. The only things I didn't like about this movie were tiny little minutia things.
Okay, well, and I'm assuming you want to talk about that more in the spoiler part.
Yeah, because it does have to do with Final Records.
Okay. For myself, I really enjoyed it. I thought it started off a little bit slower. I wasn't looking at my watch at all, which is kind of how I gauge if I like a movie or not, how often I'm checking the time on my watch. It was a little bit slower. There's a lot of talk about girl power surrounding this movie and going into this movie. They're saying that little girls will have superhero to look up to. What do you think about that? Do you think that this is something that how old is, or how young or how old should someone be to take them to this movie? George, what do you think?
Well, being that I have a 9-year-old son, I mean, there were some jokes that were adult appropriate, but I mean, I think I had a conversation with you guys before. I mean, it's pretty much where if you know your child, what they like, what they know, talk to them about it, especially if you know the rating. If it's a PG-13 movie, you automatically know there may be some crude language or some jokes, but I would even say, I mean, if your child is 6, 7 years old and they're into superheroes and they read the comic books and they just love action packed, then I say take them.
Okay. I see. I think it was a little bit slow for a 6-year-old. The theater I went to, there was a few kids there. I don't think, for rating wise, it's too old for a 6-year-old. But I think there's slow parts that they'll find boring.
Yeah, as far as the rating part, yeah. As far as, I would say more so, as you said, Stan, the beginning, I would say like the first half hour, it would kind of be grasping their attention of where the storyline is going. Because there are some parts that are a little bit confusing until like it actually picks up to say, okay, this is the storyline, this is where it's going.
Yeah, I think a 9-year-old would be ideal age to start at. I think anything younger than that, they might lose their attention. The kid a couple seats over from me was doing cartwheels in his seat. He was bored out of his mind. He was squirming until it got into the good stuff in the second half of the act. Yeah, and a lot of movies where they're talking about the help me out, guys. The origin of the character, they often are slower, especially at the start. Jason, what do you think? How old would you bring? Like an 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 6? How young would you bring?
I think I'd be comfortable taking someone as young as 7 to go see this movie.
7.
This is not a violent movie. It's not a gory movie. It's a comic book movie. It's an uplifting movie. And the whole people complaining about the slow parts, this is a complaint I have with movies today in general. Not all movies have to be bang, bang, bang action the whole time. It's not a music video. I kind of liked that it was slower in the beginning. I like taking the time for the world building and the characters.
Yeah, please don't get me wrong. I say it was slower in the sense that I think for a younger child, it might be too slow for them in this day and age, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe I'm out of tune. But yeah, it was a lot of story-driven, this movie was, for sure. I think so, because they covered a lot of ground in this movie. What about the synopsis?
No, sorry. I was going to say, yeah, for someone like me or like us that, really pay attention to, storyline and characters and everything, I think the slow parts, especially from Marvel, depict of who these people are and, their background and where they come from and pretty much what drives the story. Yes,
exactly. And a little bit about the story for people that haven't seen it, but we don't want to spoil anything. It's about Jason, what do you have?
I'm going to read the synopsis straight from the
internet. That's the easiest way.
The story follows Carol Danvers as she becomes one of the universe's most powerful heroes when Earth is caught in the middle of a galactic war between two alien races. Set in the 1990s, Captain Marvel is an all-new adventure from a previously unseen period in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
There you go. Nothing spoilerific, but it kind of gives you an idea about this movie. Now, if you haven't seen, or you're not a huge Marvel fan, but you kind of want to dip your toe into the Marvel verse, is this a good movie to jump into, or should they go back and watch something first? What do you think about in that sense? Jason, let's start with you this time.
I don't think you have to know the history of the universe. This is one you can jump in if you haven't seen anything before. There's Easter eggs and references, but nothing is going to make you feel alienated if you go sit down and just watch this one movie in the way Ant-Man and Wasp or Guardians of the Galaxy were.
Well, the first Guardians of the Galaxy would be a good jumping in point, I think. The second one, maybe not quite so much.
Also, the first Guardians and the first Ant-Man, you can watch those as just a movie and walk away and not have to keep up with the MCU.
Yeah, so this, just like nearly any origin story, it's a good jumping in point. George, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, I would highly recommend someone that's just getting into the Marvel movies or maybe not familiar with the storyline or the characters to actually see Captain Marvel first. Because there are some, without giving away too much, there are some plot points within the movie that pretty much give some answers to some questions of seeing other Marvel movies. of like, well, why is that, and why did this happen? And then after you see Captain Marvel, it's like, oh, so that's how that started, and this is how this became.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never really even thought of that. Kind of like how a lot of people say you should watch with the Star Wars movies, watch 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, then 6. A lot of people say that's the way to watch it because you're not sure who Vader's father is or son is until you get to 6.
Hold up.
You don't agree with that?
4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. Explain this to me.
Okay, well, the reason a lot of people say that with Star Wars is the whole Vader saying I'm your son to Luke. So you watch 4, 5. So
Vader's
now,
Luke's son?
Wait, you mean father?
Father. Father. Did I say son?
Yeah, you say son.
Luke being Vader's son. So at the ending of 5, Vader says to Luke, I'm your father. We don't know until 6 whether Vader was lying or whether he was telling the truth. So if you leave it with that point and then you go back and watch episode 1. So now you're watching episodes 1, 2, and 3 and you're following the life of Anakin. And then you go, okay, so Anakin is now Vader. Vader says he's Luke's son. We kind of know at the end of 3 when Padme gives birth and she names him Luke and Leia. We can now go to 6 and find the actual that where Ben says, yes, your father, he, or Luke, or Yoda says, here's your father, he is. You get the whole story. And a lot of people say that's the way to watch it.
Hold up. We're going to have to make this an entire episode because I need to talk more about this with you.
Sure. There's a lot of different ways you can watch Star Wars. And a lot of people, they ask this question when they have younglings growing up and they say, what's the best way to introduce it? I grew up watching 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Should I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or should I do it a different route? And there's a lot of people have different beliefs on.
Yeah, so a part of that before moving into Star Wars the miniseries, that's that I would actually strongly suggest that people that want to get into Marvel and want to watch the movies, I would actually strongly suggest on seeing Captain Marvel and then going into the other ones.
Now, if you want to do it in chronological order, you'll start off with Guardians of the Galaxy because that starts off in the 70s.
No, Captain America takes place in the 40s.
40s. Yeah, there you go. Start off with Captain America. We want to skip.
I smell some continuity episodes coming up, but we're going to have to just sit down and hammer this out.
Or what if you want to do it accurate, put on Captain America, watch only the 40 parts, take the disc out, and then put in Guardians of the Galaxy,
the
70s.
Fast forward to the 70s, and then take the disc out halfway through that before he zooms into the future and becomes an adult.
Spoilers.
Oh, man. I think we're digging a bigger ditch than we want to get into.
Well, there was a 5-minute tangent.
Yes.
We just took the detour into a dark alley.
I was saying, this is why they're called detours.
So my theory is any origin episode or movie is a great movie to jump into any franchise. Is my answer. Jason,
really quick, you said origin movie, and because I'm someone who has been reading comic books my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I know their origins already, and I'm tired of origin stories at this point. I loved this one. This was a new take on an origin story, and like I said, I'm 100% in with this film.
Yeah, and the way they did the origin story was unique too. We could get into that if we want in part 2 of our show. Do we want to take a break before we get into spoilers, or do we have anything else to add before we get into spoilers?
No, let's get into the good stuff.
Let's get into the
I don't know.
stuff.
Do we have any more Star Wars tangents?
Yeah.
Houdini! Jason, do you want to take a quick short break, and then we'll come right back into spoiler territory?
Right. Let's listen to the trailer for Captain Marvel, and we'll be right back.
So, Skrulls are the bad guys. And you're a Kree, a race of noble warriors.
Heroes. Noble warrior heroes.
Your life began the day it nearly ended. We found you with no memory. We made you one of us. So you could live longer, stronger, superior. You were reborn.
I keep having these memories. Something in my past is the key to all of this.
You know how to fly this thing?
We'll see.
That's a yes or no question.
Yes.
Would you like to know what you really are?
I think I had a life here. What aren't you telling me?
You've come a long way, but you're not as strong as you think. This war is just the beginning.
I'm not gonna fight your war. I'm gonna end it.
Aren't you the cutest little thing? Aren't you cute? And what's your name, huh?
Fury.
What's cute? I'll be back.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, from here on forward, if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, then pause, don't delete, go watch the movie, come back, press play. Kind of like when you're planning on watching Captain America and pausing and then putting in Guardians of the Galaxy and pausing and then putting, starting that again. Anyways, so where do we want to start with this movie? I kind of like the way the origin was done. Well, we were talking about origins before the break. George?
If I could actually just say one thing of starting off, what I just have to just add this in. What I thought was really, really cool and special was at the very beginning of even before the movie started, during the Marvel logo of how they show each character and it assembles of Iron Man and Thor and the Guardians, that they just showed all snippets of Stan Lee and his contribution to the films, and then it said, "We thank you, Stan," in the very before it even started the movie. I thought that was a perfect homage to him.
Yeah. And when they said, "Thank you, Stan," you know what I did?
Yeah, you're welcome.
I yelled out. No, I didn't. But I do have to say, George, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought... What's that?
You sang it from Moana. You're welcome.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. And now we've done a few of these movie reviews, and we've always talked about shedding tears during these movies. And Christopher Robin, I did not shed a tear. I am a monster. What was the other one we did? Everyone else?
Mary Poppins?
Mary Poppins. People were bawling. I was a monster. I didn't shed a tear. I needed a napkin during that Stan Lee tribute to wipe my face clean. I'm glad I picked up some napkins to have with my popcorn because, geez Louise, the tears were rolling down my cheeks for that one. I don't know why it hit me so hard, but it did. Jason?
I gotta say the Stan Lee cameo in this one is my favorite because it was so meta.
Mm-hmm. Him reading his script to what movie was it?
Mallrats.
Yes, rehearsing his script in the 90s of Mallrats.
It wasn't that. It was the way she kind of took the pause and kind of broke the fourth wall for a second.
Yeah. Now,
it was a great I'm not a 90s child, so the 90s don't
hold as much nostalgia to me as the 70s or the early 80s. What did you think about the 90s references in this movie?
That was actually going to be my next thing. That actually struck a chord with me because I grew up in the 90s. So it just took me right back to my childhood when I saw the Blockbuster sign and the Radio Shack. And then when she approached the security guard and he rolled down his window and What a Man was playing from Salt and Pepper. And I was just jamming in my
And she turns and she sees a face and she blasts it immediately without even thinking, and it's from True Lies, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
And all the movies in the Blockbuster. I was like, oh, I remember that movie. I'm glad they didn't have like made up movies. They had actual movies.
And then she picked up a movie and she was looking at it, and I was thinking, what movie could it be? And then she turned it over and it was The Right Stuff, and I thought, oh, that's great.
Was it The Right Stuff or Top Gun?
I thought it was The Right Stuff.
It might have been The Right Stuff. But it's still, that's the type of movie that she would have watched. Like, it was so perfect for her to be drawn to that movie of all the movies in that Blockbuster.
And it makes me want to go back just for that scene, just to see how many movies I could spot. Because I spotted Jumpin' Jack Flash. I spotted Hook. There were several movies that I saw, and I would love to go back to that scene. Just to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And it made me miss Blockbuster. Like, I'm a hard movie guy. I buy most of my movies online now. But when Blockbuster was around, I got most of my movies at Blockbuster. I would go and get their previously viewed one. Yeah, but I've never rented a movie for like the last, I don't know, 20 years.
Kids today don't understand I don't think kids today understand the concept of like Friday night, you get your pizza with Blockbuster.
That was the holy
grail. Scam.
Yeah, exactly. I missed my Blockbuster at the end. And it was right at the end of my street, like 2 blocks away. And what was the era for this movie? Was it 95?
95.
95 was the year?
Yeah, because they said the accident was in 1989 and then 6 years later.
Okay. It'd be interesting to go back and watch and see if they did screw up at all, and if there was a movie from 97 or 98 on the shelf.
There was a screw up, but I had to do with the music.
Okay, which one?
Okay, so love the music in this movie, but if she disappeared in 89, Nirvana's Nevermind didn't come out till 91. She never would have heard Come As You Are. When she goes and sees the Supreme Intelligence the second time, and Come As You Are is playing on vinyl, the vinyl record wasn't released till 96. So that was me when I said the minutia was the only thing I had to complain about.
Okay. Let's go a little bit back to the origin story. The movie doesn't start off with like every single origin story of Spider-Man, where he's a high school kid and he goes to the lab and he gets bitten by the spider that we've all seen 800 times in different comics and books and novels and movies and TV shows. This origin starts off with her being in the crash, and it kind of takes off from there. And we've sort of learned her story as she's learning her story. Is how this movie works. And I really like that kind of a unique twist on the origin, in that I didn't know Captain Marvel. I kind of quit comics around the time that Captain Marvel came out. So this is basically, I was familiar that there was a Captain Marvel character and I was familiar with her powers, but I honestly didn't know her origin at all. So I was learning her story along with her. Jason?
Let me jump in real quick, because she's only been Captain Marvel since 2012. Carol, and this is a way better refined version of her origin story, because she first got her powers in 1969. And in 1977 is when Miss Marvel #1 came out. And she's been Miss Marvel all this time until she graduated up to Captain a few years ago.
Okay. So, and what makes her a captain? She's not the captain of the ship. She's not the... Where does the captain part come from? I must have missed that.
Go back and read the books.
No, I mean in the movie.
Originally, she got her powers from Captain Marvel, who died of cancer, and she took the name
Captain Marvel. Oh, okay. You know what? I seen this movie like a week ago. I'm forgetting parts already. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I would actually go on to what you were saying, Stan. I enjoy the fact of, as you said, while we're trying to figure out the mystery behind the storyline, so is she. And I just thought that was completely unique, as opposed to really watching the characters go through the scene. We're actually going through the scenes with them.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point, in that we're basically getting the same origin story.
And like from the very beginning, it kind of already started her having the power. So it's like, okay, well, how did she get here? And how did she But just like you, I really didn't follow too much of the storyline of Captain Marvel. I didn't really know anything of the backstory. And then I'm probably kind of going a little bit ahead, which we'll go through, of when she was connected with the Kree. And it wasn't actually until my son leaned over to me in the theater and he whispered in my ear and he said, I thought the Kree were bad. So it was, when it struck and it was like, oh, yeah, that's right. And then when Ronan came up, and it was like, okay, now I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
It was like, and then that's when I was thinking, and that's when I repeated back to him, maybe she's on the wrong side without even knowing she's on the wrong side.
So you found out quicker than I did, because I was kind of confused by that too. I'm watching this and I go, okay, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys again? Like the Skrull look like the bad guys, but they sure as heck aren't acting like it.
Well, this is a complete change because the Skrulls have always been bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how I kind of remember them to be as well. And I thought maybe they were putting on some kind of show or some kind of act right till near the end of the movie. I was waiting for them to kind of like, we got you. We're the bad guys after all, is what I was kind of expecting to get at the end.
Although you say that now, I am going to call it right now, right here and now. Talos' daughter, and she was unnamed in the movie. I will bet you anything her name is Varanki. And 20 years later in the modern timeline, she is going to be the Skrull Queen who kicks off the Secret Invasion storyline in the MCU.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is okay, the very beginning when they're doing that fight scene, and they're making close-ups of that little blue, I call it a restraining bolt on her neck. And actually, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that in the very first, 10 minutes of the movie, that, Jesus Louise, that looks like a restraining bolt on her neck. And then it turns out it was. Because no one else had one. And that kind of bothered me throughout the whole movie, is why is she the only one with this blue glowing thing on her neck? And I thought, I was kind of, well, maybe it's because she's human, and that's what gives her powers. And it was restraining her powers all along. What did you think about that turn of events? Why would they be restraining her powers like that, you think, when they're at war with another race?
Well, I think it was actually smart the way that they had created the storyline to make it show that, okay, you're sort of in training and you have to learn to harness those powers, where meanwhile she already kind of knew how to use the powers. It was just holding her back.
Well, that was just it. Like, why are they holding her back? Right? We're going into battle, and we could give you a submachine gun, but instead we're going to give you a muzzle loader because you're just learning how to shoot.
I think it's more so because they were afraid of exactly what happened if she ever found out.
Yeah, but it was just a matter of ripping it off. It was crazy glue holding the thing on. Like, it wasn't.
But it was the fact that they psychologically made her think to say, okay, I need this. So it's almost using reverse psychology.
Yeah, I guess so.
She was nothing but an asset to the Kree. She's a potential liability. It's a way of keeping her on a leash.
Well, that's exactly what restraining bolts do for droids, is that they keep them on a leash for, in this, again, going back to what I know, the Star Wars universe. And that's kind of what this thing was on her neck. And it kind of like left the theater going, well, why did they put that on her to begin with? But I guess it's all part of the story. We got to take it for what it is. What did we think of Brie Larson as an actress in this movie? Was it convincing for you?
Perfect.
I think she was great.
Yeah, I thought she was awesome. And I think for women and for little girls in particular, they have a new hero. I mean, Marvel now has a Superman in their midst, basically. Somebody with very similar powers to Superman. And I can hardly wait for Endgame and when she shows up. That is going to be a cheering moment, I feel. I got a feeling that Endgame is going to start off very dark, and Captain Marvel is going to show up, and it's going to be a whole new ballgame.
Well, and if you actually, and you kind of already get a little taste of what's in store for Endgame, that when she finally released her powers, and forgive me, passengers, if I'm going a little non-sensitive, but I'm sorry, she kicked ass.
Yeah.
And so it was
Thanks,
just
George.
like,
I got to cut that out now. Keep it clean rated.
she kicked booty. And it was that if her, and it was just like mixed with the music in the background, and it was just like, wow, she is like this rebel. So it's like, if she's doing this now, that I could imagine what she's going to be like in Endgame.
Yeah, by the time we get to the 2020s type of thing. With the now with Thanos and that gauntlet, how can anybody beat that though? He snaps his fingers and she's done. You know, he sends her back in time. He sends her in a time loop. He could turn her to butter. He could, you know, it's going to be interesting how they write Endgame. And I'm so excited for Endgame. You have no idea.
Kind of going off the subject, but staying on the subject, didn't they say of a theory that it still had something to do with Doctor Strange when he went back how many times? And he said that there is one way.
One outcome? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I still stand by that, in that he knew what he was doing when the snap happened, and that was he knew, he was aware of the outcome.
Well, we know that now. I mean, he said there's only one way to win this.
Yeah, yeah, and he saw it.
And I think she's a big key in that.
Yeah, oh, it would be exciting to tell. And my favorite character, who's your favorite character in this?
Captain Marvel.
Who's that?
Captain Marvel.
Nope. George? Wrong answer, George. Jason. George?
For me, I would have to say it's. You may think this is weird. It's actually Nick Fury for me, and the reason why is you're always used to seeing Nick as how he is, but I actually got to see a side of him that isn't the traditional Nick Fury. It was like the start of him before he assembled the Avengers.
Yes, exactly. And I think that movie studios now have, or they did with Rogue One with Leia, have the making people look younger. They got that nailed. Like it was hard to tell that this wasn't Nick Fury or Samuel L. Jackson going back in time and playing himself.
Yeah.
Jason?
Okay, so really quick, speaking of a younger Samuel L. Jackson, did you guys spot the clever reference to Pulp Fiction?
With the Slurpee cup? Or the milkshake?
No, when they're riding in the cars in the dark suits and he's driving, it was just the way the scene was framed was a lot like the Royale with cheese scene.
See, the part that took me back to Pulp Fiction was when the crawl captain leader guy came in with sucking on the milkshake. That brought me back to Pulp Fiction when Samuel L. Jackson had the milkshake talking about going to France and the
Royale with cheese
versus the quarter pounder because they don't have the imperial system, they have the metric system in France.
But I have to say, as far as the car scene, I didn't resonate with me, but yet at the same time, I had Pulp Fiction in mind when that scene was going.
Yeah.
It remind me of it. But based on how it actually made him look as if how Samuel L. Jackson looked in the 90s. It was perfect.
It was bang on. It was bang on. And then my favorite character, of course, was Goose, the cat. Any scene with Goose and I was happy. But as good as Samuel L. Jackson looked, when Goose was computer generated. There was times that, to me anyways, Goose looked like a cat from Shrek, Puss in Boots.
That's the only thing that I'm starting to notice with CGI and computer animation. I don't know what it is, and I'm not just depicting this film. I'm saying just nowadays, are they trying to save money by not updating? I mean, there are video games that have better CGI than movies do.
But the younger face technology hasn't changed since they first started doing it.
Well, the younger face technology they have nailed. They got dinosaurs nailed. They got the younger face technology nailed. But for some reason, every once in a while when you're watching a movie, you could see that is CGI a mile away. And my eyesight isn't that good.
Anytime Samuel Jackson was running or fighting, you could tell.
Okay.
If you looked at his face when he was running or fighting, you could see it.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't the quite the high definition there. But when they took Goose and they kind of tossed him, her, and the cat slides, or it's not called a cat. It's not even. It's a alien creature that looks exactly like a cat on Earth by some
Flurkin. It's a Flurkin, and my favorite line of the movie was "Mother Flurkin."
Yes, the Flurkin. Okay, there we go. That was so CGI. It was ridiculous, and even the tentacles from Goose was. Can you imagine someone who hasn't seen this movie when Goose tentacles came out?
But I'll actually take it one step further. I love the relationship between Fury and Goose.
Oh, absolutely.
How he just took to the cat took to him, or the Flurkin, or what the Flurk, I don't know. But anyway, it's that up until the point where Goose scratches his eye, and it's like, okay, well, there's the patch. So
yeah.
But did you notice when he scratched his eye, the scratch marks matched the claw marks on his eye in Winter Soldier?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then the same way we were learning about Captain Marvel's origin, we're also finding out about Goose. And of course, the alien creatures are afraid of cats. Okay, fine. We'll take that as like they're afraid of cats. And it goes so far as putting a muzzle on Goose. And I'm sitting in my seat going, oh my God, these people really do not like cats. And then you find out later on why they put the muzzle on the cat. I just love that scene. Like any scene with Goose in it just made me happy. So let's go around the table and give this a 1 to 10 Goose eggs, or how do we want to do this? Marvel stars? Marvel blast? Star blast? Blockbuster rating. What's our blockbuster rating on this movie? Jason, how many blockbuster stars do you give this one?
I'm going to give it a solid 9. I had such a good time with this movie. I've been a fan of Carol's for a really long time because of her connection to the X-Men. Loved it going in, loved it going out. I will buy this the day it comes out on Blu-ray.
You answered my question. I know you don't buy every movie that comes out. And I was going to ask you, because I know if you like a movie, you're going to buy it. And I was going to ask you that. Are you buying this one? So you answered my own question. George, how many blockbuster stars do you give this one?
That was actually my number that popped right in my head when you asked the question. It was a 9. Straight 9. The only thing that probably, I didn't catch the vinyl thing that Jay did, but probably what didn't make it a 10 is just at times I noticed the computer, the CGI, where it looked not as real. That's the only thing that didn't make it a 10. And to answer the same question that Jay, the day it comes out on Blu-ray, I'll be purchasing it.
Yeah, I'll be picking it up as well. But I pick up every Marvel movie, so that's no surprise. It took too long for them to get to pulling off the restraining bolt in my mind, and the CGI bothered me enough that I'm dropping it down to an 8. It was a great movie. I loved it. I liked it more than Black Panther. I'll have to sit down and decide where it's going to go in my list. Like Jason said, it's number 4, his 4th top Marvel movie. I don't think it's in my top 5. I really enjoyed the Guardians of the Galaxy ones too much. I enjoyed Thor Ragnarok much more than this one. Jason?
What is everyone's top 5 Marvel movie, just out of curiosity?
We got to do a show about that, but Thor Ragnarok and the Guardians of the Galaxies will be in my top 5. I got to sit down and think.
I know we're probably going to do this in a show anyway. Mine is Black Panther, Infinity War, Captain Marvel, the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and Ragnarok.
So we're very, very similar. Yeah. I don't put Black Panther or this one in my top 5 though. I put Guardians of the Galaxy number 2 in my top 5.
Really?
Yeah. I really enjoyed that first opening scene with Groot. I like Baby Groot. I didn't care too much for Groot in the Infinity War. I think that brooding teenage Groot was a waste of space and time. But I really enjoyed Baby Groot. I enjoyed Groot in the Guardians first one. Probably one of my top Marvel characters that's in the MCU. I'm more of a Daredevil guy. That's who I grew up reading. Daredevil, Power Fist, Iron Man. Those were my main characters growing up. I have tons of comics, and most of them are either Star Wars or Daredevil. Anyways, we're getting off topic. Anything to add to our detour episode?
I will say this to all you passengers: if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, go see it. It is definitely worth every penny to go see it.
Yes, absolutely, I agree. Jason?
My final thought is the correct order to watch Star Wars movies is 1, 2, 3, Solo, Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, 7, skip Last Jedi.
But you haven't seen 9 yet. Maybe Last Jedi will make sense after you see 9. It's a trilogy. You got to see all three.
Then his would be 7, 9, skip Last Jedi.
So you're doing 1, 2, 3, Rogue One,
Solo, Rogue One,
4, 5, 6,
7, then 9.
7, 9, skip Last Jedi.
7, 9. Wow. I don't put Last Jedi in that much contempt.
This is why we call them detours.
This is what we call detours, because we weren't on topic for 90% of this show. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining me today in the Solo Studios, and take it away, Ken.
If you would like to keep the adventure going after the show, be sure to like our Facebook friends page, Grand Circle Tour Magical Ticket Holders. While on Facebook, like our group page, Grand Circle Tour. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Grand Circle Tour Podcast, as well as Instagram, GCT Podcast, and our YouTube channel, Grand Circle Tour. If you would like to send us a message, you can email us at gctpodcast@gmail.com. T-shirts and other fun merchandise can be found at tpublic.com. Simply search Grand Circle Tour Podcast. If you enjoyed your adventure, leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Only one rule: make it good. Thank you for riding with us, and welcome home.